Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas! Welcome to You'll Love Christmas with Dee and episode 8 of Metaphysical Communion, our Christmas special. I am D'Angelis Colon, the host of Metaphysical Communion, and I welcome everyone here this evening. So, we are in the spirit of Christmas, obviously, and we're going to talk about a few things relating to the change of energies lately, which have been actually very positive and uplifting. Many of you have possibly been hearing about, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, the grand conjunction, which just occurred 2 nights ago on the winter solstice, first day of winter. And the significance of that occasion, I touched upon it, obviously, last week's program on the Great Mutation. And the Great Mutation, for those of you who did not see the program, talks about also the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which means that both planets were at 0 degrees. So it appeared in the sky that they were almost like one heavenly body with a lot of shine and light to them. So from the naked eye from Earth, it appeared that it was a gigantic star in the sky, which was relating to the star of Bethlehem. So for seeing it that way, you would see a very bright and powerful star in the heavens. For those of you who have telescopes, high-power binoculars, photographic technology and equipment that can take pictures of these things, you can suddenly zoom in and see the planets at a very close proximity to one another from 0 degrees, or at least to 1 degree apart. They're certainly still millions of miles away, physically speaking, but from an astronomical point, they are extremely close in their orbit, like they haven't been in 200 years. And the 200 years denotes, first of all, the change in the element, for the planets. For the last 200 years, they had always been in, the last 20 years, they had been in earth elements, and 20 years before, and 20 years after, 200 years. So every 200 years, they've been changing from one earth sign to the next earth sign. So we were in Capricorn, with this conjunction, but now that has shifted. So the great mutation aspect means that after 800 years, they have shifted from an earth element or sign to an air sign, which is Aquarius. So now we have Jupiter and Saturn both in Aquarius. So that is a major change and shift in energy, for the world and for all individuals, which means that there's going to be a shifting in the way we view things, our perspective. In the energy field, we're going to feel more of a sense of society and working together and being more unified in working together. The intellectual mind will increase and expand like we haven't had that in years. Technological things are going to be advancing more and more than ever before in all area of the sciences. So it's a major evolutionary process that we are undergoing, and it's a lighter energy to work with. The earth element, the earth signs, obviously are very grounded, very realistic. We've been able to achieve a lot in the last 800 years because of that also, because that's the element that needed to happen for society in the world at that time, which is a very grounded force, working very hard. It could have been difficult a lot of times, but we had to achieve by being grounded, realistic, concerns for things of the earth, a lot of things dealing with ego, also an achievement, and not necessarily in a positive way, unfortunately, because unfortunately things can get corrupt. All signs, all elements have their positive and negatives. From the positive aspect of things, it was, again, working hard, moving along the physical earth, discovery, exploration, advancing things, building, things, foundations of things, architecture, improvements in that, improvement in those types of elements or so. We built many new things. We advanced in many new ways. We expanded, let's say in the United States, from the East, we expanded to the West. and started new cities, new societies, out there. But it was difficult and it was rough to get there, as we know if you are aficionado of American history. And of course, in other countries, they had their own expansion and growth in their societies as well. But the difficulty came because people wanted to conquest, take over, achieve, and then become greedy and wanting more. And basically having, lots of wars and miscommunications, and pride got in the way. The ego got corrupt in many ways also, as we well know. That doesn't mean that things are going to be happy, joy, for the new era that's coming. As I said, there's a positive and then there's a negative to things also. The positives for here is expansion, growth in technology of the mind, evolution, advances, genius, creativity, because air signs, especially in Aquarius, has a lot of creative aspects to it. Invention, more than ever before. We invented a lot in the last 200 years or so, or more in this country, with the Industrial Revolution, for instance, and the advances there. But now we have that as a foundation. Now we can move in the new Aquarian age, from that and go higher in the technological aspects of things, in the creative aspects of things. And it'll be swifter, in a sense, easier to create and to advance new things, new technologies. We're seeing that happening already in the last several years, already, as people have discovered newer and more improved things in the art of medicine, in archaeology, in even surgeries, or so, advances there in cures, in chemical structures or so, in discoveries of different ways and different forms. In the literary sense, also advances there. People are becoming better educated, also learning more than ever. We have the computers, this technology that came from the earth-based things, but through hard work and difficulty, but we have it. But we've also seen in the last 20 years how much that has advanced and how it's improved. That we can relate, or to the Aquarian elements that were already starting to fall into place before this actual date that has occurred and this actual conjunction, because things don't always happen just at the moment or cut in stone. It takes a while for these advances to come through. So very rapidly, just in the last 20 years, even in the last, let's say, 5 years, we've seen major advances technology like we haven't seen before, coming much faster, more evolved, more advanced, and so much more to come with this new age that we have just entered. Things that we can't even comprehend right now in 5 years will be almost effortless. So that's what that denotes. It is a time of genius, of learning, of working together, society working together in union on the world. It's about healing. Also, the things of the past that caused damage or so, we're going to now heal things in many different levels. That is what this new energy brings, and just in time for the new season and for the holiday season also, and astronomically, with all things falling into place so beautifully speaking. It is incredible that this conjunction happened right under winter solstice, season of change. The universe, higher power, works in mysterious ways. Look how beautifully everything fell into place. It's synchronicity. It is meant to be. We are entering an age where we can breathe. So 2021 gives us the promise of hope, of expansion, of lightness, but a new age where we can all look at this with a sense of hope and joy, and not to carry the burdens anymore of the past, with us. Marvels are on the way, and we're going to be indulging in some extraordinary things. So a year from now, things will be very, very different. And from the looks of things and from what I've been able to sense or so, much more positive than the last 12 months. So it is a time of enlightenment, of lifting, and of positive energy. So you must focus on that. The more the world mind works in the positive and in helping one another and effecting a change for the good, the more it will happen. Rest assured of that. So we have a lot to look forward to in the new year. And we're feeling it right now. Look, we already have, a vaccine for the coronavirus that looks promising right now. And that's a big encouragement, to be seeing. And because in my regular job, I work in the medical field, luckily, I'm able to talk with doctors and hear about things and what they hear from their colleagues and what they know about. And I had a very interesting conversation last Saturday, actually, with a doctor who was telling me that this vaccine looks, very good and very positive. It has a 95% rate of efficacy, which is extraordinarily high, luckily. So it can give us a sense of confidence that this vaccine can work. And he also pointed out to me that you have to realize that the flu vaccine that we've had for so many years, that helps us, protects us against catching the flu or minimize the effects of influenza, of the flu, has only always had an efficacy rate between 25 to 35%. That's all. So that was astounding for me to hear because I have never, heard this before. And to consider that the new coronavirus vaccine is 95% or 94 to 95% efficient is extremely encouraging and very positive to hear. Again, there are a lot of us, including myself, that are still doubtful about taking that immediately because we have to find out about side effects, as always. And, let's see what the long run turns out with that. As the doctor pointed out to me, he said, now we have to find out how well it works because how long lasting it will be. That's not really so well known, obviously. He said, for some individuals, it could just have, an existence rate of 3 months only, and then they'll just have to take another vaccine again, after 3 months. For others, it could last 6 months in their system. For others, it could last a year. We just don't really know 100% yet how long lasting this vaccine will be. So that's the next step in what we have to learn. So let's hope that, that this does, do what they've promised and that it is, efficient in protecting us a great deal, from the coronavirus. It truly is in its infancy. You can say it was just born just a few days ago because we had our first people, take that vaccine. Of course, the providers and the healthcare workers who are at risk the most. And so far, the majority have reported that they have felt fine. If we've been watching the news or reading the newspapers or so, the majority of people said they've experienced minimal discomfort. They feel good, they feel fine, they feel relieved. There's been, 1 or 2 people I understand, as far as I know, that have had some side effects or so, but that hasn't been like a major catastrophe yet. So, so far, but it's still new. And we still have a lot to learn, with that. So let's see, it hasn't even been out for a week yet. So let's see how that goes. But at least it's very promising. That just happens to fall around this time period as well. Advances in science. Look how quickly they came up with this virus out of necessity. So for some people it inspires, fear because they say it's too quick, it's too soon. I agree with that also. It is a lot, it's too quick and too soon also to really know for sure. But they have done their very, very best to do what they needed to do to get this out, and it is something that they feel that is safe and reliable. So, but still, it's a learning curve, and we have more to learn. The scientists have more to learn, but they are still working diligently in improving, these vaccines. So the Pfizer vaccine has come out, the Moderna vaccine has come out. I understand there's 2 injections one has to take 20 days apart in order for it to be fully, efficacious. And for it to really, do what it needs to do, which is protect us, hopefully, from the coronavirus. So we have to wait and see. about that. So it's going to take a few months, obviously, as we know. As I predicted, since the spring or so, that won't be, really till next spring or so, where we will know with more certainty that this indeed is working out and that things will work out better. Anyway, I will do another program about that aspect of things in the very, very, very near future. But getting back to our Christmas celebration here or so, we do have a lot to be thankful for and to look forward to, if nothing, else. So it is positive news. It is positive things that are starting to happen. And it looks so far so good for the better. Let us all pray that it continues to remain going in that direction, positive and in light. And going back to our first topic here, which was the grand mutation, or the great mutation, the grand conjunction, we're in a very positive time period. Those energies are tremendously powerful throughout the entire cosmos. It affects everything and everyone. So it's a sense of joy, a sense of light that we should be all feeling at this time. Better improvement for those of you who've had difficulties in the last few months because of COVID-19 or etc. Still, you may not be feeling so much joy or happiness or whatever, but do listen to the information that's being imparted, and that it is something that is showing that we are heading in a positive direction. Take some solace in that. At least things are not getting worse. We do have to keep an eye now on this new strain of COVID-19 that apparently has been, working its way through Europe, especially England. But they're saying, luckily, that this vaccine should also be effective in combating, that one as well. So we should be, protected, hopefully, from that. It's still early. So let's hope that that news indeed is 100% true and that we don't have a disappointment, in a few days or a few weeks from now, about that. But so far, so good. So we can really be a little bit positive about that. It never hurts to be positive. After everything that we have been through in the last 10 to 11 months or so, we can use a change in perspective for the better. It will help us always, from the most minute way to the most grand way. This will pass, and we will get through this. It's just about taking care of ourselves the best way possible to ensure that we do get through this. And that's what we need to focus on. The great conjunction or so is a herald, a door for that beginning, a door that is opened. And we can look at it that way and feel a little sense of relief and a little sense of something good is coming our way, fortunately, besides a few other things along the way too. So it signals, a new positive era, as long as we work together to make that happen. If we don't, there's always a negative to things as well too, including, this conjunction or this mutation. As I said before, there are positives, but there are negatives to things always. And what can happen is that, we can get a little bit, a little bit lost in all of the new things and all these this evolving that's happening, and being creative, get a little bit too carried away with it, a little bit too much, overboard. That's not a good thing, because that's already excess. And it goes into the realm already of greed once again, and even pride, also. We get carried away with things also, and thinking that things are better than what they actually are. And let's say putting the blinders on or the rose-colored glasses on. So you must be aware not to do that. We have to be grounded, and we must learn from the previous era to be grounded, because it is a good thing. It keeps us real, balanced, and focused, and really attuned to what things really are, and not going off into a realm of fantasy or spectacle because we're feeling so much better and we're getting a bit lazy about things. This is not the time to get lazy. It's not the time to get overly relaxed. Not at all. It's about being responsible, being clear, and being focused about what we need to do. We're not out of the woods yet, and we won't be out of it for quite some time. Even with this vaccine, and if it starts to work and do whatever, we still have to be mindful and we still have to take care of ourselves. It doesn't mean that in 3 months' time, we're going to be taking off the masks in public and just go on the way that we always were accustomed to. It does not mean that at all. We may still have to wear our masks for quite a while, just as a protection still, until we see the numbers drop significantly and less people, falling ill to this virus. That's when we can then start to open up, again, and feel more comfortable, in the outside world. But at least we are on our way to improvement and good things and restoring the planet back to health and to the way hopefully we were living, and hopefully we'll be living better than we were before. And that's the big lesson to learn about all of this. And for this holiday season, it's about learning to be better, learning to help one another, reduce all of the anxiety, all of the anger, all of the hatred, all of the negativity, focus on what we need to do, helping one another, reducing animosity, reducing discrimination, reducing all of that negativity and all that ridiculousness and all that ignorance, opening up our minds for those of us who can, and evolving our comprehension. Some people have a better comprehension level than others, unfortunately, for whatever reasons that may be. And for those who are not able to open and, and improve their comprehension level, well, then we just have to be, mindful of them, but we also have to be supportive as well. It's not about having enemies and say, oh, it's you against us. That's not going to work, obviously. It hasn't all these thousands of years. What makes you think that it's going to work ever? It's not. We have to be understanding, and we have to meet people where they're at. But we also have to stand our ground, and we also have to be a voice to educate and to enlighten others. And hopefully, eventually, at some point, in their own way and in their own time, they'll get to see it. And the light will dawn, in their mind. But it's about working together and not holding that kind of animosity towards those who don't agree with us. That just perpetuates more negativity, more hostility, which then turns into hatred, and then more fear. We will not be moving ahead, obviously, we'll be moving backwards, which is the last thing we want to do. And now that we have these incredible energies working at our favor, there's so much about the future, about advancement, about growth, on all areas of our lives here in this world. We want to tap into that. It is a gift that has been provided to us, that has been given to us from the universe, from higher power, from the God source. Let us not look at it in vain, and let us not disparage the gift that has been presented to us. Let us accept it, embrace it, and use it for the good of everything. That falls on the auspices of what has just occurred in this change of era, and more to come. Because now we're in the Christmas season, the season of love and devotion and peace. We want to embrace that energy more than ever before, and we have the opportunity to do it. So this is the time to do that. And I will raise a glass of eggnog for that, and to all of you for a blessed holiday season. So do enjoy yourselves. This is a time of peace and love and coming together, and that's what you need to do. And it's about, making it better. For those of you who are not feeling it, I certainly understand. But it is to at least try to see it in some way, that things will improve. and they will not stay stagnant. They will not stay dark for you, forever. So be aware, we are in a very good phase of a new transition and a new beginning falling into place for us here. So moving into that with your Christmas season, this is a season of spirit, also. And I've spoken about this in the past many times also with my clients. In fact, I was a little bit late this evening starting the program this evening because I ran a little over with a private client that I was seeing through virtual means. So it went, it was a lovely reading from my friend there. And so just went a little bit over because I wanted to provide all the information that came through, for them, and whatever spirit provided to them as well. So again, it just ran a little bit, but that tends to happen with readings. But that's the way it was. But at least I was able to conclude properly for them. And now we are here. So with the program just getting started, I'm going to do half of this program tonight via Zoom, which we're using right now, obviously. And then I'm going to use the other half and do it in Facebook Live. A lot of people seem to enjoy and connect with me on Facebook Live more than they do here, on Zoom. So I'm going to do this portion, the first portion here, which is basically this discussion, this lecture here. And then we'll focus on some spot readings and divination, on the second half through Facebook Live. So that way people can join in, there and ask their questions, and I will, provide what spirit, gives, to me. So we'll do it that way. And then I'll transfer this over anyway to Facebook, eventually on my page, De Angelis Colon, Transpsychic Express, and as well as my new YouTube channel, which is titled Metaphysical Communion. So it can be watched, on both platforms. And as for the FB Live, I'll try to see what I can do about connecting that on YouTube as well, also, so you can hit the second portion with the readings for those who might be interested in seeing that there. Eventually, I'll do a program directly from YouTube, live. I haven't done that yet because I'm still new with it. And I'm just starting now to get comfortable with Zoom, but I do want to switch over to YouTube at some point, at least gradually. So I'll be using all three platforms for the time being, but I do want to get into YouTube and do a live program there, see how that goes. And if things go very beautifully, and if people join me regularly, and if you subscribe on my YouTube, channel there, then we can focus mainly on doing these live broadcasts on YouTube instead. So that'll be very interesting. Then I can always transfer that over again to Facebook for those who might be interested in seeing the program later on. And then Zoom, we'll do Zoom on occasion. I'll be using it obviously for my readings. So I've just recently started doing readings through this platform with Zoom or Skype, and they've been working out very well. And I'm very pleased with that because I miss doing readings regularly. And now that I've gotten a handle more on how to use this technology, I'm beginning to feel more comfortable with it. So we've had some wonderful and interesting results, come through, and spirit has come through beautifully, for several people. So it's worked out very, very well. I'm very happy with it. And so I'll be doing that. So for those of you who are interested in connecting with me, for a private one-on-one reading, either through Zoom or through Skype, you can get in touch with me via my Facebook page or my messenger. They're in De Angelis Colon, Transpsychic Express, or my email, which is deangelis3444@msn.com. I'll be providing that link, there in a bit on the chat there. So for those of you who see this later on, you can see the information there. But let's talk a little bit about Christmas. I'm just looking at the time here. I think I started around almost half an hour ago. So I'll stay here for another 5 minutes or so. So I do want to talk a little bit about what we were talking about a moment ago. I had some notes that I've written out here and that I also looked into doing because I'm big on research. So I like to research things and provide the most accurate and up-to-date information for all of you, as well. So I was glancing here, some of my information here. It's a bit dark here, so the lettering is a little smaller than I would like it to be. So let me see. So I'm looking into this here, and this is a separate item apparently because I printed out a number of things today. All right, very good. So what I need is here actually. So, and oh my goodness, I printed out a lot of stuff here for this. All right, so what I have is here. Let's see. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Star of Bethlehem and the significance of that, because it relates so beautifully with this grand conjunction. Because if you may have heard also that 3,000 years ago or so, the Star of Bethlehem may have been the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn coming together so closely, forming the very bright Star of Bethlehem. We're going back 3,000 years ago. And of course, we had people who already knew about the stars in the heavens back then. And they did their charts and they did astrology is very, very ancient. But they were astrologers even at that time period, numerologists also. And they were already doing astrological calculations. They were quite familiar with the stars and the constellations that they could see through the naked eye at that time. So they were pretty much aware of this star, in its presentation. And they called it, at least in that part of the world, the Star of Bethlehem, which also signified the birth of the Christ child, the baby Jesus, which fell upon that time, so they say. But then again, we have to remember that it is also stated that Jesus was not born, in December, during the cold time of the year or so, but may have actually been born more like towards the spring. So let's say more like between March or April, because we had the Piscean age. And I do believe he was born during the Piscean age. And he is certainly somebody who embodies all the traits and characteristics of a Pisces, which is peace, spirituality, the coming together of things, understanding, helping one another. The sign of Pisces is the 12th sign in the zodiac, which is the final sign and encompasses traits and qualities of all the previous 11 signs, combined into the Piscean energy. Just a very wise symbol, a symbol of peace, as we know, the water, emotions, tranquility, calm, understanding, wisdom. It embodies all of that. So it is stated there. So again, we don't know because science hasn't been able to go that far into exploring. But who knows, one day, perhaps in this new millennia, we will get some answers to those questions. But in the meantime, we do have the Star of Bethlehem and its significance, here. And so it's a beautiful symbol, a beautiful time. If we do look at it that way, that this is the Star of Bethlehem returned after so many years, after, let's say, 200 years or so, it is a symbol of hope. And if nothing more, we can take this as a symbol of hope for our future. Embracing in love that good things are coming our way if we open to them, if we let go of our resentments and our fears and our hostilities. We can work together. We may agree on everything one-on-one, but we can certainly, try to understand one another and not have all of this anger and rage, because it's not helping, obviously. It's only making things worse, and it prolongs the negativity more and more. We will never achieve peace, ever, in that way. So it's about communications. It's about empathy. It's about working together, taking another one's point of view, examining it, presenting your point of view, let them examine it as well. It's about fairness and balance. That's what we want to achieve with this new time period that comes for us. And the elements in there, and many people have been crying out, finally, we need to have this done. We need to put a stop to all of the evil of the world and all the negativity. And we need to come together. Let's hopefully that this time people will finally learn that lesson and start working on that and start building upon that. So as I'm looking here through my notes, here for you, I'm going to see if I can bring out anything that stands a nice point here. That'll make sense. The Christmas star, let's say, is a different story when it is presented by astronomers. So we'll look at the scientific version of things because it's misleading. Every backyard astronomer knows that you can't get anywhere by following something in the sky. Earth's rotation quickly makes the contents of the heavens change position. Whether planet or supernova, everything rises in the east and rightward during the night and sets in the west. You'd go in a giant semicircle if you followed any kind of celestial object. Plus, no astronomical body can come to a screeching halt over Bethlehem or anywhere else. So as I was saying, it appeared that perhaps the Christ child was not born in December, but more like in the spring. At that time, this star may have appeared during the spring cycle instead, because the convergence of that time period with those planets may have been more in that period of time, not now as it's presented for the winter. Again, 3,000 years is a long time. The rotation of the world, the axes of the North and South poles have shifted and changed somewhat since then. That causes major changes, even in geography of this world. There's been a tremendous amount of changes from 3,000 years ago till today. So we have to look at that too and take that into account, also as well. So now let's see, take both religion and science seriously. In and of itself, the mixing of science and religion is shaky, but it can be helpful in specific cases. Science should be present whenever it can be useful. When the Shroud of Turin controversy raged, the use of carbon-14 dating provided an unambiguous answer. The cloth that once supposedly covered the just crucified body of Jesus proved to be less than 1,000 years old. It wasn't the real shroud, but a hoax from the Middle Ages. Science to the rescue and case closed. Not necessarily. This wasn't written so much. I'm glad I'm presenting this actually, because yes, they did have those findings or so with the Shroud of Turin, with the carbon-14 dating. But going beyond this, there have been more testings of that since that period here. And they've discovered there are certain anomalies that have taken place there, with the shroud and with certain discoveries that they have found, which kind of alters this conclusion here a bit and opens the possibilities once again that the shroud isn't exactly 1,000 years old, but could be older. And there's other things coming away there that have opened the door once again to the possibilities of that actually happening. So science is wonderful and excellent, but it's not always 100% correct. Spirituality also isn't always 100% correct either. We have to bring both forces together, hopefully, and one day that will, where science and spirit, can combine. And actually it's not so far across as many people think, because spirituality works in a great deal in the principles of science. Magic works in principles that align themselves beautifully with science. And science has its things where it's intuition. In a sense, you can say magic that influences there from time to time too, with synchronicities or so. There are no such thing as coincidences. So there's a melding there of both. And eventually, once people are able to tap into that and discover, we can bring both science and spirituality into harmony and working together. And tremendous things can happen, from there. This is all a work in process. We are all a work in process. So we have a lot of that going on there. So from the start of Bethlehem, we have a lot going on, here. So let us see. Just read a little bit more about this. And we talk about the Star of Bethlehem once again. How was it? When was it? How it would be? And again, it's still really not known except from faith and religion of what people experienced at that time. And the writings from the Bible or so that talk about such things. Even though the Bible doesn't really touch upon too much about the Star of Bethlehem, but we heard from other sources that indeed there are, people did see a very bright object in the sky at that time. So we have to take into account, after all, 3,000 years later, and people still revere this experience. That counts for something as well, too. So science doesn't always have the answer. So we have to look upon that very, very well, too. So we can look into that beautifully there and see that here. So having faith provides miracles, as many of us have experienced, including myself. So we can never just say, oh, only science is what counts as relevant. Absolutely not. How do you explain then spiritual experiences that people have had, connections or so, and have proven and shown glorious and wonders as salvation for so many? Just because they're not going to be proved doesn't mean that it's not so and did not happen. So we must respect both points of view. Anyway, I want to conclude here with a lovely little story. For some reason, this came upon me to look upon once again. I haven't seen this in quite a while. And it's about Christmas, obviously, and we're doing a Christmas program. And for some reason, what came upon me recently was the story of The Night Before Christmas and the famous poem from Clement Clarke Moore, which was written back in 1822. And we know about this beautiful story, this beautiful poem, which became a story, and it's been, published in books for obviously hundreds of years. And it's the most published book during Christmas time, even still to this date. I learned a little bit about Mr. Moore, that this was in England, and he wrote this poem actually just for his family back in 1822. And he was already a well-known and respected writer at that point and poet. And he just wrote this just around the Christmas time, just for his family only. Apparently, it was so lovely that his children, they showed it to the other children in school or so. And from there, one of the mothers of one of the children, who was a friend of the family, saw the poem, was very touched by it, and saw how beautiful this is. And she took it to a newspaper and had it published there because they thought it was just so lovely as well. And from there is when it started to be known in the public. And from there, it just started to spread and has become a classic, throughout Europe and then throughout the world from there. And Mr. Moore did not acknowledge that he was the author of this poem until 20 years later in 1844. So the poem was actually written in 1822, was published in 1823. Afterward, in 1844, Mr. Moore, through the urging of his children, decided to publish a compilation of many of his works. And among them included the poem, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." And that is when he finally acknowledged that he was the author, even though it was known, it was rumored or so, but he didn't want to really speak about it or so for whatever reasons. He wanted to keep it very personal. But it took all that time, and he finally published it, and he finally, admitted that yes, indeed, he was the author of this beautiful, timeless, poem. So the things that we learn. For some reason, the last few days, it came to me for somebody to look into this once again. And I'm going to read it for you now, in conclusion of our program here. For some reason, there's a spiritual overtone to it. This time period, I am being guided to provide this to you. As I read it, perhaps some of you out there will feel something or gain something from this. That is the hope and the wish. So, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" by Clement Clarke Moore. So, 'twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were all nestled, all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief, and I in my cap. had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter. I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below. But a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment he must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop, the coursers they flew. With a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head, I was turning around. Down the chimney, St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur, from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke, it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head, he spoke not a word, I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew, like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. And that is the blessing of Christmas. I hope that has beautiful significance for you, that it brings you many blessings, much joy, much happiness, and much peace for the end of this year and for the beginning of the new year. Blessings to all of you. May you have a glorious, blessed, wondrous, and Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah, even though I know it's concluded, but a blessed Happy Hanukkah because we are still in the air. A blessed Kwanzaa for those who celebrate. A blessed New Year's Eve. And a blessed and happy New Year. Love to you. I will see you next week. Take care.